Hey guys, and welcome to All Around Hockey, the new YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fan. So yesterday we started something kind of cool. We started looking at the season previews for all 32 teams. We of course began with the Anaheim Ducks, and we used our friend Puckpedia here along with Hockey Reference to kind of look at the stats from last season, and we used Puckpedia also to maybe gauge on what other moves the team could make for the remainder of this offseason as the offseason starts to go a little bit quieter. Figured it was a good time to start this. And so something cool that I think will be really cool for the channel, and I hope you guys like it as well, because I've been enjoying making these things here too. And so obviously with the Ducks, now we're going to move on here to the Boston Bruins as our next team. And so Boston, as you can see, the lineup here, some additions they made. They added J.J. Peterka from the Utah Mammoth. Also, they added William Morgan from the New York Rangers in exchange for a second and a third round pick, and brought Connor Clifton back. You know, he started his career off there at Boston, went to Buffalo, went to Pittsburgh, and now finds his way back with the Boston Bruins. So good moves so far for them. As you can kind of look at the stats they had last year, we'll dive into that a little bit. They had 45 wins, 27 losses, regular season losses, and 10 overtime losses, or 100 points on the season in Marco Sturm's first year. So a very successful first season for Marco Sturm. And they finished fourth in the Atlantic Division, ended up getting beat by the Buffalo Sabres in 6 games in the first round of the playoffs. But it was a good season for them, made a nice playoff, made a nice run. Gave Buffalo a pretty good run there in the playoffs, and ended up being a really successful season for Marco Sturm's first year, as we mentioned before. A couple of the big people that they lost this offseason, they lost Victor Arvidsson to the Detroit Red Wings as he signed there. They also lost Jonas Korpisalo, and they made a 1-for-1 minor trade a little bit with Fabian Lysell for Ivan from Colorado. So far, not too many splashy moves from Boston, but when you had a 100-point season, there's not many big moves that really need to be made so far. Let me move my down here. We're gonna look at the stats. The big point getter obviously was David Pastrnak. He continues to just be David Pastrnak. 29 goals, 71 assists, 100 points on the season. The big surprise last year, I think, for everybody was Morgan Geekie, as he almost got a 40-goal season, ended up with 39, just one shy. 29 assists and 68 points. Pavel Zacha continues to be productive center for them there in the top 6. Charlie McAvoy, who won the gold medal with the U.S. team, continues to just be the number one defenseman that they need him to be. Obviously, like I said, they lost Victor Arvidsson, so they're going to lose some production there. Elias Lindholm, hopefully they're hoping to get a little bit more production out of him, and hopefully he can stay healthy and on the ice as well. And then Casey Mittelstadt, not too bad. And then Fraser Minton had a pretty good year there for top third line and top 9 forward. So that was a pretty good season for them. So what kind of other moves could Boston really need to make? I mean, you look at this roster that we have here. As you can see, they have about $5 million in cap space, a little bit over $5 million in cap space still remaining. It's a pretty good lineup. Not too bad, you're kind of hopefully relying on Morgan Geekie to have another big year. You're looking at James Higgins making that jump to the National Hockey League this year. Fraser Minton, still hoping some good production out of him. And then obviously, like I said, you're kind of hoping Elias Lindholm can find his touch again. And J.J. Peterka coming in to be the Victor Arvidsson replacement, a little bit younger version of the player. You're hoping he can have a good year. As you can see his stats last year with Utah, as we get that loaded up here. He had 25 goals and 22 assists, 47 points in 82 games, about half a point a player. Not terrible, but you're probably still hoping more from him, as he's going to be taking one of those top line roles now with you. As you see on defense, Mason Lohrei still there. That's the big name of a possible trade. They still look pretty good there on defense. Henry Yukiharo is still there. Hampus Lindholm is still there. Nikita Zadorov. It's a pretty good top 6. Not that bad. And then obviously the main goaltender, they traded Korpisalo. Does Mike Michael DiPietro now take that spot now as the backup, or did they maybe take a run at maybe like a Cam Talbot to come in for a season, just to have that veteran presence? Or DiPietro's paid his dues in the minors, so he definitely could be ready to take that backup job. But as you can see, Jeremy Swayman's numbers from last season here: 55 games played, a 2.71 goals against average, and a save percentage about 91, close to it. So not too bad. A really good season from Jeremy Swayman, as he continues just to be Mr. Reliable there in the net for them, and it's just a really solid number one option for them. So definitely Swayman's probably going to get about 60 games, you got to think. And so, 50 to 60 games on the season, if he can stay healthy, that should hopefully be good for them and good production, as he's still got 5 more years left on that contract, as you see at 8.25. So what other moves could Boston kind of make? You look at the Atlantic Division now. Yes, they made it into the playoffs last year, along with Montreal, Buffalo, and Tampa Bay. But the big problem is they're probably still in the toughest division of all hockey right now. Florida's getting Alexander Barkov back along with Brady Tkachuk, so you got to figure they're going to be back in it. Tampa's still good. They brought in John Carlson. That was a good move for them. Montreal's still young and got all their guys ready to go. Buffalo's going to take maybe a little bit of a dip. Now we're going to go over them in the next video, so stay tuned for that one. But they're rumored to be after Patrick Kane and possibly another top 6 forward there as well, possibly an Alex DeBrincat type of situation there. So they could definitely still stay on track there. So I think Boston, they have a good roster now, but maybe they could use that one big move, and we'll kind of go over that just a little bit later. But one of the big people to be rumored on the move right now is Mason Lohrei. And a big team that's been rumored to him is the Calgary Flames. So we're going to kind of go check them out here with Calgary. And what could be a good trade here, I think, is another player rumored to be on the move with Calgary here. As we go down and we get, there's Mason Lohrei right there. Mason Lohrei could be a left-handed shooting defenseman there for them. A big person that's been rumored to be on the move as well is Connor Zary. So maybe that could be a nice solid 1-for-1. Both guys kind of just need a change of scenery. You can see Connor Zary's numbers for last season. He ended up with 12 goals and 13 assists in 25 games. Not the best production, but like we said, maybe somebody who just kind of needs a change of scenery to find that touch. He was a first-round pick in 2020, so it's somebody you could take a nice shot at and see how he does. And they might come in handy for another future trade we might have here. So we'll submit that trade and see how that looks. Obviously, you could add him into the depth chart and maybe put on that third unit. Maybe have Fraser Minton down there along with Mark Kaselek and Tanner Jeannot. Might be a pretty solid fourth line. And then you got Sean Corrali still there too. James Hagen's could go there on the third unit, or you could maybe even move him onto the second unit. Well, maybe even Connor Zary goes up to that second unit. So I think that's a pretty solid 1-for-1 trade. That's I think a trade that a lot of people have thought about maybe since Calgary's rumored to be after Mason Lohrei. Maybe that could be an interesting move. But another thing they could do is get a big move done. Obviously, they can get Matthew Portis signed as well too. He's an our restricted free agent, so there's another person who could possibly go into the forward unit. So, but another thing you could maybe look at is another trade. There's been another. Now that you traded one of your young defensemen to Mason Lohrei, one of your top 4 defensemen, maybe you could still get. There's another pretty solid top 4 defenseman that's rumored to be on the trade block. That's young and still kind of fits in this timeline for you, and you could possibly go to the Carolina Hurricanes. And I think a player that Boston's been rumored to be going after and could be a solid pickup for them, as he's over here in the reserve list, as he's not signed right now, as he's a restricted free agent, is Alexander Nikishin. Now that's a pretty interesting defenseman to add there, along with Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy. I think that could really make a really solid top four unit. As what would Carolina want in a trade for Alexander Nikishin? He wants around $8 million in a contract. Carolina's not really willing to give him that. But maybe there are some prospects that could possibly intrigue them to possibly make the trade. I think you could do it without even trading James Higgins, but you probably would have to trade another one of the top prospects. Maybe like a Dean Letourneau, I think, is somebody that I think has big size and could really be a big centerpiece of an Alexander Nikishin trade. Excuse me. So those are that could possibly be the centerpiece of that. They also might want another defenseman since they're trading Nikishin. They have Keandre Miller already in the top four there. Jalen Chatfield was playing top 4 minutes with Slavin. They still have Shane Goss to spare. So I think their top four is still pretty well set there in Carolina. So I think they might want just somebody who could be a productive 5-6 defenseman. And, if you're going to bring in Alexander Nikishin, as you can see, there's just a little bit under $5 million in cap space. He's probably going to get more than $5 million. So you're going to have to probably trade some salary cap. And that includes Henry Yukiharo as a possible trade piece there. And I still don't think that gets it done. Dean Letourneau is a solid prospect and had a really huge year at Boston College with James Higgins as his teammate. And Henry Yukiharo is a pretty good defenseman, more of a 6 probably. So not like the star-studded player that they might want. But you kind of look at Boston's roster in Carolina. They have sort of a type player that they really like. And I think there's one type of player on the Boston Bruins that could really make a big difference for them in possibly getting a trade like this over the hump. And that could be a Merit Kuznetsov. You see his numbers last year. He's 24 years old. He's 5'11". He's got speed. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he had 15 goals, 18 assists, 33 points, and was really solid for them last season. It might hurt to trade that along with maybe a Dean Letourneau. So maybe you could do a lesser prospect in the trade, but I think this is something that could possibly get it over the hump for Carolina's sake and also for maybe Boston's sake. And so I think you bring in maybe an Alexander Nikishin here onto the team, and we can go down to restricted free agency. We can bring in Matthew Portis back. Probably won't require much, maybe around that, but also an Alexander Nikishin now. He's rumored to want about $8 million on a contract, so maybe we could bring him in around 7.5, maybe on that type of a contract. I don't think that's a bad deal for him. Maybe on around a 7-8 year contract, maybe even about 6-year contract. That takes a lot of the cap space away, but it also provides a pretty solid first off a top pairing now with Charlie McAvoy and Alexander Nikishin. Hampus Lindholm, William Borgen, Connor Clifton can now take over that starting spot there. Maybe you could call up a Jordan Harris. Yeah, that puts you a little bit over the cap there now. But maybe like a Matthew Portis starts the year down in the AHL. Since you got a lot of veteran forwards to kind of take that veteran spot, so that kind of then evens out the cap space. And you could go like Crowley and Klistic on that fourth unit. So I think this is a pretty solid team now at the end of the day. You guys can let me know if you think differently. I kind of look at what's been rumored out there. Mason Lohrei for Connor Zary, I think, is a trade that makes a lot of sense. and it hasn't obviously been done yet. So maybe that's not even what they're possibly talking about. But two guys that kind of need to change the scenery, and I think Connor Zary could honestly be somebody who could really work well in a Marco Stern system. Obviously Morgan Geeky had the huge year last year. You know, you're not really, I guess, banking on that again. Maybe he can hopefully do that again for you. Um, and he was really good with him and Pawazaka had a lot of chemistry last season. And so I think this is a pretty solid team now. You guys can let me know if you think differently, obviously, in the comments down below. But this might be something that could be interesting for the Boston Bruins. And maybe if they brought in an Alexander Nikishin, maybe that could put them over the hump. Um, against teams like the Florida Panthers, against teams like the Buffalo Sabres, might take a little bit of a dip this upcoming season with losing Tuck and Bowen Byram. Tampa Bay, they just still have all the guys there from all their cup years, and now they added John Carlson, so they're still going to be good. Toronto could be making a comeback this upcoming season. Detroit, who the heck knows what's going on with them at this point. They now lost their general manager the other day. So I still think there's a chance Boston could make it back into the playoffs. You'll have to let me know if you guys think this is a playoff roster or not. And just tell, you know, how do you guys feel, Boston Bruin fans, going into this upcoming season? Are these moves you would be willing to make? Or are they just kind of, would you maybe rather go after Vince Dunn on defense? Does Connor Zary not interest you at all? Would you rather just try to figure out a different trade for Mason Lohrei? Shane Wright's another player they're rumored to be interested in. Could that possibly be a guy they get? Although he seems to really want the Vancouver Canucks, and the asking price from Seattle seems really high right now. So I just feel like this is a nice, like, little 1-for-1 trade with Zary, and kind of just see what he can do type of player like Shane Wright would be. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Really like to hear from you guys. I'm going to publish this one on Puckpedia. Can also hear you guys from there. And next video, we're going to go over the defending Atlantic Division champions and the Buffalo Sabres as they officially broke their playoff drought. And we'll see what other moves they could possibly be making here too soon. And so let me know how you guys like these videos. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to All Around Hockey, the YouTube channel for the All Around Hockey fan. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.